I wondered, coming at it from the perspective of a country that only deploys sea-launched ballistic missiles, on the grounds that these are perfect second strike capability deterrents because they are invulnerable. What answer you have to that point, really, because ICBMs are vulnerable to first strike capabilities. So are aircraft delivered nuclear warheads. And I agree with your point that that sea-launched ballistic missiles are.
Can you ask a question? I don't mean
transparency. But how do you answer that point about vulnerability?
The thinking that this goes back to the first deployment of ballistic missiles, sea-launched ballistic missiles, that and they were perfect, deterrence. They met all the requirements of deterrence theory because of originally they had short range, they had low yield warheads, they were not very accurate, they were not so they were not useful as first strike weapons. The Navy, and it's a fascinating history, has worked very, very hard to turn them into the ideal first strike weapons. So now they are the forefront of our first weapons. They have extremely high yield warheads, they're extremely accurate, they are routinely deployed off the coast of Russia and China, and they can fly into crest trajectories and so strike as weapons very early. And plus you can move them around so you can fly in between gaps in radar coverage. So they're one of the main things that the Russians and the Chinese fear as first strike weapons. They're specifically designed for that mission, and they have been for decades.
This is one of the interesting things about the two reports. They actually arrive at different force structures based on different reasoning. We think that a monad based on a submarine force, demerving the submarines, and a very low number of deployed warheads would actually not comprise a first strike, could not comprise a first strike system against the remaining Russian target base. But moreover, there are simple protocols that the two sides could establish that would reassure China and Russia that these submarines, for example, were not deployed close in. And these ideas have been around for a long time. It's just a simple protocol that requiring a certain number of submarines to surface within a certain period of time based on a request from the Chinese or the Russians to establish its position. Statistically, if you do this regularly enough over a period of time, you can acquire confidence that these submarines are not being deployed out of area. But when we're talking about 500 total weapons, you're talking basically about a submarine with 144 warheads in the Atlantic and Pacific at any one time on station. So, and the possibility of sort of generating the Trident force that then could go out and successfully conduct a first strike against another country. I do not believe under a very small force structure that we're proposing is a realistic prospect. But these are the kinds of things that actually the negotiations in getting down to this level are going to be about. Our view is kind of agnostic, actually, on we propose this force, we also propose a more diverse force, but we think the total number is more important than the particular way the forces are structured.
Can I just add to that? This is a process. We're thinking about a process. We're not sort of thinking about tomorrow going down to this posture. And it will involve other nuclear weapon states. And when people talk about the need for invulnerability, et cetera, it's very much tied to the kind of exchange scenarios that we have with the former Soviet Union. And in the future, you can see now, for example, where China is beginning to deploy a new class of ballistic submarines at sea, we're sort of moving toward a future where more and more countries are beginning, nuclear countries are beginning to put weapons to sea. And because of the unique characteristics of this, it's hard to find, it's hard to monitor, et cetera, et cetera. It makes what makes more other countries most nervous, other nuclear weapon states most nervous. We want to get back to this issue that the kind of posturing we should aim for is one that brings us out of this dynamic, out of this threat defense dynamic that has been so powerful in driving development of new capabilities in the past. And I think honestly that you know, putting a few ballistic missile submarines out to sea under a very reduced posture to the military would be more problematic than having them spread out over land, because the vulnerability of the land-based force really has to do with a Cold War type of adversary being able to take them out. And if, again, coming back to the process, if we're talking process here with the other nuclear weapon states, moving out of that type of combatant type of nuclear posturing, then I think it makes sense.